but might not be crawlable or indexable by search engines, think about using HTML5. It's an open standard, and it's already supported by modern browsers. All right, so we're here, 2011, SMX Munich. What I hope you get from this conference, and from me too, is to learn new tips and avoid the distractions. And one thing that, when I showed earlier about this kind of marathon to reach our users, go one more. An interesting parody is taking that one step further. And that's what if search engines try to optimize for search engines, right? And that's where we have this person, McKenna, who actually did, what if Google SEO'd their own site? It's pretty interesting. So, we have a minimalist homepage, but what if Google had designed a user interface for Google? Add some cross-linking, keep things fresh and up to date so we have most popular links, starting to look like a real website. Oh, new content every day, so recent searches. And this one is probably my favorite. Oh no, actually, this is the added social bookmarks, which is huge a few years ago. This is it though. Yes. We got the word search into the page 9 times. So you can see it's now called Google, Internet Search Engine. I'm feeling lucky with my internet search. And that just kind of is taking it to an extreme, right? I mean, you look at sites that are designed for search engines, and just imagine if a search engine did the same type of thing. We didn't focus on users, didn't focus on the compelling product, but instead thought about SEO. Now, SEO still has a very valuable place, because it's about best practices as well, and it's about prioritizing all the options you have out there and catering them to the site that you're working on. In fact, I would go so far to say, it's not hard, that Google's great at the compelling service. We are great at attracting natural links, but we're not so good with other factors. And those would be things like title tags, unique title tags, not having the same homepage in multiple areas, which is confusing for users. So we actually reviewed our own products, 100 products from a Google internal team that works with search, and it was fairly embarrassing. So I believe 3- is how you guys say it here. We say C- in the US, but that's like, yeah, that's not doing well, right? But there are some things we did well. So while our SEO, title tags, on-page optimization is not so great, we were good at some other things.
One question, what's the best one? So one?
Well, I thought in Germany, I'm going to be mean to my friend Matthias, but he told me your marks from 1 to 5. Oh, it's 6. 1 to 6. Okay, where A is great, so A is 1, and then F is bad. Okay. So this is saying that it wasn't so good. So we're not good at SEO. Accept that. We need to be better. We definitely need to be better. But the good thing about us is that we don't ask, how do we optimize ourselves for Google? What we ask is, how do we be better for users? Which I think is the same question you should probably be asking yourself. It's not about, what do I do to be better for Google, but it's actually, what do I do to be better for users? That's the first question you should be asking. So, for Google, since the beginning of when we were founded, there have been 4 main principles. It is user experience. That's like now we launched a new UI that allows you to search on images directly or news, shopping. Relevance, that's obvious. That's using things like location, that's using social signals now. And then the 2 that I'm going to cover are comprehensiveness and speed. So between these 4 is where Google's priorities are. Go ahead. So let me go back to the past again. I'm kind of going past to present. Back in the day, this homepage served us pretty well. It had 2 great uses. One is that because it's so minimalist, it doesn't have that much, it doesn't have that many XML, it doesn't have that many HTTP requests pulling in different images, and it has very little text. It's super fast, right? This isn't instructing or getting anything to the user, so it keeps performance speedy. The other great thing about this homepage was that it was designed by Sergey, and Sergey doesn't like doing HTML. So this served his purpose. I didn't have to do much, right? Speed is our factor. And then let's go back, so next slide. But even with speed being a factor, we still had to look at how we were serving our users. And this is where making trade-offs comes into play for Google, and I think these are the same types of things you'll see on your own site. So we have those 4 priorities. But many, many years ago, we talked to users and said, hey, we give you 10 results. Do you want what kind of numbers would you like? And it seemed like they kind of converged around 30 results. They thought, oh yeah, 30 is about the right amount for me to scroll without getting too tired. So we thought, perfect. So we roll out an experiment that has 30 results on the page. Interestingly, they seemed to get to their answer in a longer amount of time. So the speed wasn't, it took them longer to find their answer. Second, over time we noticed that they even started to perform fewer queries. So we have two major negatives. First of all, they're not getting the answers they want. Second, they're not wanting to come back to us. This is bad. But they said they wanted more answers. They said they wanted to be more comprehensive. And that's why we decided this is about making trade-offs. What we found is that when we had to put 30 results on a page, it increased or decreased our performance to a noticeable level at which users took longer to find their results, caused them more dissatisfaction, and so they didn't want to search as much. So you have these priorities for your site, and you'll notice that they all have to stay within some type of balance to make sure that you're still serving users at the optimum amount. And this, again, is what I think SEO is a lot about. It's not about chasing search engines, it's about figuring out what's the optimal experience for your users. So, another thing, thank you, Alexander, is that came up as another type of dilemma, and I think this also brings into some interesting stuff for Google. We were giving users results often in less than half a second, and they would still complain about the speed. So we're like, oh, what's up? This is pretty fast. And then they would say, well, what happens is I search, I put in a query, I get results, I click on a result, and then it took me so long to get to the page. So I don't really like Google, I think Google's slow. Now if you're us, you're like, that's not our fault, right? That's the website, we can't do anything about that. But it doesn't matter, because that's still the experience on our site. Much in the way I'm sure a lot of you have sites where you can't control everything. Maybe your server's in another location, maybe you're running ads from a third party, right? There's things you can't control. But there's ways to be creative, is what I'm going to get at here. So, can you go? Okay. So what we thought about, and this is tough. Actually, before you look at the slide, just think about this for a second. I'll probably just now you're over to look, because I just told you not to look. Okay, but anyways. If your Google and your users complain that when they click on a result, it takes too long, but you know it's not really your fault, what would you do for them? So if you just brainstorm, I think one idea that I would think of immediately would be something like, hey, what if by each result I put up kind of like a traffic light? Red if it's a really slow site, green if it's really fast, and yellow if it's in between. So let's do something like that, right? We were brainstorming different ideas at Google. How can we help this user experience and performance? And so things like that would come up, a whole bunch of ideas popped up. And that actually seems kind of nice. If I were a user, I'd actually like to see what's slow and what's fast. That doesn't sound bad. But we could just take in the user, because this race and this marathon that we're all in isn't just about the user. There's other parties involved. And in our case, the other party involved that might be harmfully affected by this would be all of you as webmasters. We asked ourselves, if we were to label these results somehow for users, which might be helpful for them, would it be fair for all the site owners? In some respects, it's fair. Everyone has an equal chance to be fast, but we also thought, what if you as a webmaster, you're labeled red and you're slow, you immediately change your site, how fast are we going to be able to update that to make it green? Can we do it quickly? In the same way we do malware labels, within hours, can we do that for speed? And the answer was no. We also asked ourselves, what about calculating latency from different areas of the world, or on-peak hours and off-peak hours? Because that green light can change to red if it's a peak hour, or it can change to red if it's across the globe. Can we be that nuanced about this? And the answer that time was also no. The third question we asked ourselves, while that might be great for users to label results, do webmasters really know how to make their site faster? And what have we done to help them? And unfortunately, we had to look in the mirror and say, we haven't done much. So we know this is critical to the user experience, but we haven't done much to help them in any way. So that's where, instead of just labeling results or doing something like that, we started the Let's Make the Web Faster campaign. Launched several years ago on code.google.com/speed with videos and tutorials. At the same time, we launched the paid speed Firefox plugin, also available now in Chrome. mod page speed for Apache, the Google Public DNS, and site performance and webmaster tools. We have all these things available to you now. And these are pretty much available before we actually said that we would use site speed as a factor in rankings for Google.com English queries at the time. So you can see how it's not just about prioritizing our own needs, it was about kind of looking at the entire ecosystem and seeing what was necessary. Now the next thing that we did, in addition to kind of prioritizing those, was using the new technologies. Because back in the day when we had 30 results on the page and users didn't like the performance, those were prior to a lot of the way the web has evolved. So another way we found that we could speed up performance was with Google Instant. And it was using the XML HTTP request that I talked about earlier to get those results to fetch as the user's typing. And now we save 2 to 5 seconds in kind of being creative with the new technology. So there's so many ways to attack the same problem. Next thing is also with instant previews. Want to go forward? Same thing, we're using same types of new technologies, and by doing so, we reduce the number of unwanted clicks, and when used, increased user happiness by 5%. That again is using the new technology we have available. So this is all in regard to performance, but let's talk a little bit about comprehensiveness. So this is the second part of kind of Google's priorities that I want to cover. In the past, what we indexed and crawled were web pages, images, offline books we scanned. If you fast forward, there's so much more we can do. I think a lot of us know many of the new content forms, but let me talk about some that have to do with HTML5. HTML5 has that canvas element that we saw with the video. It also has SVG, which is scalable vector graphics. What it does is much like the way you just kind of create a table, you can now create shapes like a rectangle. Prior in HTML, this would be hard to do. You'd have to probably create a table or you'd have to just have an image. Now it's a simple rect tag. The other just really sweet thing is now with rounded corners, you can just put an RX for the X and Y coordinates and round those out. And because HTML5 also blends CSS, you can have an ID and a class for these and actually design it a certain way. So this is very simple to do, but it was extremely complicated before. But it gets even cooler, because SVG can do some amazing things that pretty much look like a video. Like here you can just kind of increase or decrease this magnification. This is all in the browser. This is all through Chrome. I mean, it looks like something you would do on your desktop app, but this is all done in HTML5. Another great part about HTML5 and SVG is that because of this open standard, with SVG, it's indexed and crawled by Google. So we actually can get this information, like if you have a rectangle, if you put text in there, we can index that too. So previously with images, we would index images, right? It was the alt text that was really indicative to us, or the surrounding text. Now if we use SVG with some of these interactive images, and kind of almost like video type of information, we can get that content too. This is the benefit of having HTML5 and these open standards. Another part is that of course we can crawl Ajax. We announced this several years ago. We have an Ajax site, a few transformations, and provide an HTML snapshot, and we can index that and make it searchable. Next is that we also have early stages of JavaScript execution. We're processing on-click events to find new URLs. There's a lot more that we're testing in this area, but it's pretty cool because again, JavaScript is an open standard, it's part of HTML5, and what we're doing is trying to experiment to see what can we execute correctly to find more of the web that was previously hidden to us. Now, JavaScript is resource intensive for us to process, but it's getting further along. So when you think about choosing a technology and designing your site, using HTML5 and some of the stuff available in CSS, JavaScript, and HTML can make it more readily search-friendly. So, I showed you the instructions in around 2003, and let's fast forward to 2011. It is pretty much the same. Do something cool. Include relevant keywords in your copy. Be smart about your tags and your site architecture. Attract natural links, and now, kind of the new stuff is in green. And votes or +1s or follows. Get all those